Hi everyone, welcome to the Easy Donate video series on giving. This is your host Sanjay. The mission of Easy Donate is to inspire and enable compassion in this world, and we hope that through this video series you will find the inspiration to give and learn about opportunities to share more of your time, talent, and treasures with those in need. Today, we're really fortunate to have Caroline Asiala talk to us about her giving journey. Caroline was the CEO of BCentrico, a marketing agency that helps B-Corps, NGOs, and other purpose-driven startups reach their marketing goals in the digital space. She is now a strategist at Uhuru Network after recent acquisition of Centrico Digital. Hey, Caroline.
Hey.
Hey, welcome to the Easy Donate video series. Thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us. You've marketing is the voice of a lot of companies, and I look at it as a medium through which companies tell their story, who they are, and how they plan on changing the world. We're really excited to be talking to someone who has been the voice of a lot of purpose-driven companies, startups, and we look forward to hearing more from you about your work and how we can learn from your work and see how we can give back just by listening to you. I've got like so many questions for you, but I wanted to see if we could just start by going through some of the events in your life that led you to where you are now. Being the voice of socially conscious companies. Maybe we can start there and then take it from there. Go ahead, please.
Sure. Well, first of all, thank you for inviting me. I feel very honored. And I feel really grateful to have someone like you and Easy Donate in my circle. I'm a big fan. My story. So I would probably start it off with my grandparents and parents who are my roots and really inspired in me a responsibility to give back and do something bigger than just make my own life better, but to try and make other people's lives better. So my grandfather, he really didn't like Christmas all that much. So I come from a Christian family, and he wasn't a big fan of Christmas, not because he was actually a deeply religious and spiritual person, but he didn't like the consumerism around
Mhm.
Christmas. He didn't like the focus on gift giving. And one year, my mom, I think this might have been even before, potentially before I was born, or even when I was a little kid, my mom drew his name in the family gift giving circle, right? So she drew his name. She had to get a gift for him. And she was disappointed because she knew that her father in law just doesn't like gifts. And so she asked her mother in law, my grandma, what should I get Richard for Christmas? Because I don't know. He's so grumpy about gifts. And my grandpa heard the conversation on the phone and yelled from the other room, just get a kid a toy. And that sparked an idea for my mom. And she said, huh, okay. So she called my aunt, who lives in my grandpa's hometown. And she said, it was a teacher there at the local school. It's a very small town, Caliva, Michigan. And she said, is there a family or a kid that could use some extra
Mhm.
Christmas gifts this year? And she said, yes, absolutely. Let me go and see what I can find, see what people need, and I'll get back to you. She got back to her, and it was a young man who was about to graduate from high school who didn't have a suit to wear to his senior dinner, some kind of celebration. I think he was an athlete, so it might have been
I
a
see.
senior dinner for athletes. And so my mom got him what he needed. And she wrote a letter and she gave that to my grandfather. And my grandfather, although he was kind of cranky about gifts, he's a very sweet and wonderful man, and teared up at the letter. And then from then on, it became a tradition. So every year since then, my family, my sister and I, buy gifts or make a donation to a some kind of cause in his name. He
Wow.
died when I was a senior in high school. He died of stomach cancer,
Mhm.
and but since then we keep writing our letters in his name and
Wow.
sending them to my grandma's. So that's potentially even happened before I was born. I'm not even sure, but my roots are very rooted in giving.
Hmm.
I would say another piece to that puzzle is also my recognition. I recognized very soon when I started to travel to other parts of the world of how much privilege I
Hmm.
have and how much I had taken for granted, like having a nice home and having free public education, high quality education, and going to college, all of those things that were possible for me because of where I was born and the family I was born into, not necessarily only because of the hard work of other people.
Hmm.
And so that also drives me. I think it's my family has a very strong history of generosity, but I also recognize that they're able to do that because of the privilege that we have. And me being born into that privilege, I think, gives me a big responsibility to respond to that in a way that helps other people live better lives.
Yep. No, I think that's great. I think just being in the family and having everyone around you, right? It's motivating, and I think it also makes it more natural,
Mm.
as opposed to something that maybe, if I think if everyone is not involved in giving, then maybe it's a bit harder because someone else has to, you get inspired through others. But it looks like in your case, it just came natural to you because from the time you were born, your family was involved in this. That's really great. And so this is where, like, where was this? I don't recall, like, where you were born. Like, was it
Mm. Yeah, I'm from mid Michigan. I
in
was born
Michigan? Okay.
in Bay City, Michigan, and my family, most of my family still lives in Michigan. And I lived in Michigan until I graduated from college, from Alma
Okay.
College in 2015. And my mom then was living in Washington, D.C. So I spent about a month there. And then I bought a one way ticket to Quito, Ecuador, and decided to live here for the
And
last 7 years.
tell me about your trip to, was it Kenya, or was it Sierra Leone?
Ah, Sierra Leone.
Did that happen before you went to Quito, or
Yeah, yeah. So my family was always really into traveling. My mom and dad really loved traveling, and so I got to travel a lot as a kid. We went to Brazil when I was a little kid. We went to Europe when I was a teenager. We went all over the US and to Hawaii, and we got to go to a lot of really cool places. So I always had the bug
yeah?
to travel different places and get to know different places. And when I was in college, I went to Alma College,
Mm-hmm.
which is a really tiny liberal arts college in the middle, pretty much the middle of nowhere in mid Michigan.
Okay.
And you wouldn't think at first glance that that is a doorway to the rest of the world, but it really is. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, at Alma College, it's very unique in the fact that it is very small and it's in a rural part of Michigan, but it also has a ton of opportunity to travel to
I
different
see.
places in the world and do have different opportunities around the world. So we have, I went on a spring term to Europe in my freshman year. And shortly after that, I did a service project and research project where I went to Sierra Leone with three of who are now some of my greatest and oldest friends.
I see.
And I did a service project there working in the therapeutic feeding center. And when I say service project, I really mean it was a learning project. There's not a whole lot that 18-year-old without any special training or knowledge can do to serve at a hospital or therapeutic feeding center in Sierra Leone. So when I say it was a service project, it was really a learning project for us, right? And so we went and did our learning and our service there, and I also did research project there interviewing people who had been victims and survivors of the civil war
I see.
in Sierra Leone. And I have to say that was uh, one of the bigger shocks of my life, having come from Midwest
Yeah.
Michigan, mid
Yeah.
Michigan. Not that I hadn't been to other places in the world, but I had been to Europe and I had been to other places in the United States, to Canada and to the Caribbean, but on a cruise, right? So I had always kind of been very much in a bubble,
Yeah.
protected from anything that was, you know, uh, anything that you would see in developing countries in the global south. And so when I went to Sierra Leone, which is one of the at that time, I'm not sure where it stands now, but at the time one of the poorest countries in the
Mhm.
world, it was really shocking and it was really disturbing to me, I would say, as an 18-year-old, very naive 18-year-old. Um, I met some amazing people there, heard incredible stories. In my interview series was quite eye-opening.
For
And
sure.
I do think that that probably solidified my conviction to say
Mhm.
my life is not going to be just for me. My life has to be about making other people's and righting these wrongs. Um, it wasn't until more recently, maybe in the last 5 years, that I actually started to understand why
Mhm.
things are the way they are. But at least when I was 18, I just knew that this wasn't right and knew that there was something wrong in the world that was making this poverty and destruction happen in places like that. So, so yeah, I did that, and Sierra Leone is an incredible place to be and has incredible people. Um, but it had a level of poverty that I just hadn't seen before, and
Yeah.
when you see that for the first time, it's it's disturbing. And I think people who grow up in the global South uh, are just, like naive American girl that
Mhm.
doesn't know what she's doing, doesn't know where she is, which is true when I was 18. But yeah, I think that was definitely a turning point for me in my convictions and what I wanted to do with my life afterward.
That was like, I guess the probably the first time when you got to see, what a big part of the world that we don't really see here normally, right?
Mm-hmm.
Gets to
Mm-hmm.
experience on a day-to-day basis. So,
Yeah, what a
so it
tiny
must have
bubble
been
I was living in before, right?
right, right. And and then you went to keto. So was it? Did you have other sorts of
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, I had other
experiences?
international experiences between those two. I went to India a
Oh, I
couple of
see.
times. That was then a place where it was sort of other things that were sort of shocking to
Yeah.
me, which was around um, yes, poverty. You see poverty in India, but also urbanization and pollution, and that was also something that was just sort of wild to see for the first time. Me coming from, again, middle America, rural Michigan, where everything is very spread out and nothing is densely populated. I mean, New York was shocking to me the first time I went when I was 16, right? So imagine 19-year-old Caroline in New Delhi,
Yeah.
and Old Delhi, taking a tour of Old Delhi on bicycle. That was
Wow.
incredible. That was one of the most memorable experiences, I think. I totally recommend it if anyone listening has a chance to visit New Delhi and take a biking tour of Old Delhi. It's really cool. And then so I did that. That was with some programs with the embassy in the
Mhm.
U.S. embassy in India. We were there for a couple of weeks to do a program around the Model United Nations, which is something I was involved in
Oh, nice.
college. Yeah, and then when I was in my junior year at college, I got involved in a research project with my biology department at Alma College, and that was my first trip to Ecuador.
I see.
I
Okay.
went to the Amazon actually to
Mm-hmm.
do a study, continuous study that the department was doing on medicinal plants.
I see.
And that was seeing a whole other reality, which I really loved. It was an incredible place to be. And I shed tears when I had to leave. I didn't want to
Okay.
leave. And I just really loved Ecuador. And then I spent some time in Quito and really liked it and wanted to come back. I hadn't learned Spanish very well while I was in Ecuador the first time because I was living in a community that spoke mainly Quechua and I
Okay.
didn't know any Quechua. I
Okay.
learned
Okay.
some words and phrases, but didn't learn not a whole lot that to learn in 3 months. And so, but I really liked Quito and I really liked Ecuador, and I had friends there. And so then, when I graduated from college, I bought a one-way ticket and moved back,
Right.
and have
Right.
been here ever since.
And you've also been involved with I think the girls, I think, in Quito, right? I recall reading about an organization that you were part of where
Yeah, so I've been in a couple involved in a couple of different organizations here. I actually started out volunteering for a Christian mission uh,
right.
organization. Um, didn't work out so well.
Okay.
I'm not particularly religious anymore as I was in my youth, and there was some conflict there. I'm still very close with some of the people at that organization and
Mm-hmm.
have a lot of respect for it. But um, that's one of the potentially misconceptions about volunteering and giving is that every experience is going to be magical and every
Yeah.
experience is going to be your ideal experience and you're just going to
Yeah.
have
Yeah.
warm, fuzzy memories about it. Not the case. You might get into,
Romanticization of giving, right? Where
yeah, you might get into where you're giving to
yeah,
something that you just really don't like.
exactly.
And so that was the case there that I didn't have a fantastic experience, but I met really wonderful people. And then I started doing some work with Asylum Access, which is a global nonprofit for refugee rights
I
in
see.
the global south. And
Yeah.
that was really incredible. I got to sort of combine some of the experience that I had doing immigrant advocacy,
Mm-hmm.
immigrant right advocacy in the US with knowledge and being in Ecuador. At that time, Ecuador had the most refugees
Yeah.
of any country in the Latin American region.
Yep.
The landscape has changed now with things in Central America and developments in Venezuela, and now Colombia is the country in the region with the most
Mm-hmm.
refugees, but Ecuador still is home to many, many refugees. And I started off as an intern in their
Mm-hmm.
communications department, and
I see.
then I had given myself 6 months to find a
Yeah.
job
Okay.
when I moved. And so I went to Quito and was there for 6 months. And I thought, well, I really do want to do human rights advocacy, but maybe I'll have to just kind of give that up for a couple of years just to find a job.
I see.
And the first job I got was at a human rights organization. So
Nice.
I was really, really lucky to get that. I also have to say that there's a lot of privilege built into the fact that you can give yourself 6 months to find a job.
Oh
Most
yeah.
people out of
So
college
were you
don't
on a
have
grant?
that.
Were you on a grant when you went there, or you?
Yeah, so I was working in the office. I was a volunteer intern, so I was working partially with the global communications department doing some social media work,
I see.
and then I was also doing reception and events for refugees
I
in the
see.
city. So I it was both. It was sort of I was working for the headquarters, but I was also working on the ground with the lawyers who were doing that work and seeing it firsthand. And then my first job was being an assistant to the leadership of the Latin American regional office. So
Wow.
that was cool, and we were working on things like policy advocacy and strategic litigation and providing legal services, free legal services to
Right.
refugees. But I was also in the office where refugees were being attended to,
I see.
getting
So
having
you're
meetings with their
looking at this
lawyers.
happening face to face.
Yeah,
So you're
yeah,
with them. You're kind of listening to
yep.
what they're going through.
Yeah, and listening to all of the different accents
Right,
from
right, right,
around the
right.
world. Latin America has so many different accents or Spanish speaking Latin America has so many different accents. That's why my accent in Spanish sounds really weird to most people because it's like a little bit Colombian, but it's also kind
Okay.
of Cuban, but it's also very Ecuadorian and it's just kind of a mess.
Is that, I guess, it's because of the mix of folks there. Like they pick
Totally.
up different
Yeah. Yeah.
accents
And
there.
sort of inevitably, that's one of the beautiful things about working in refugee rights is that you get to meet people from all over the world, not just as clients, but the people who tend to work in that field
Right,
also tend to be immigrants themselves. And so, or refugees themselves. And so, I worked with people from Colombia and Ecuador and Spain and Mexico and just all over. And
right.
that was really fun. That was a really
And,
cool
and, and,
place.
and what does it mean to be an advocate, like as an
Mm,
advocate for these refugees? So I guess, I guess there's different levels of advocacy, right?
sure.
And I guess the stronger of an advocate you are, you get better results. Like as you try to support their causes. Like, can you talk a little bit about your advocacy for the
Yeah.
rights of immigrants?
Yeah. So, I would say that being an advocate, or the best way to be an advocate, this is how I would sort of frame it, is to take what you do well
Hmm.
and make it work for whoever you want to advocate for. So, for example, Emily Arnold Fernandez, who is the founder of Asylum Access, she's a lawyer
Hmm.
and she started out in refugee work at a refugee camp, I believe in Egypt.
Hmm.
And she, I think she was a law student at that time, or maybe she was a recent graduate, and she had gone to Egypt to do this project uh, in legal rights of refugees. And she just realized how vulnerable people are when they don't have the right to work, when they don't have the right to send their kids to school, when they don't have the right to access housing,
Hmm.
access medical care because of their immigration or refugee status. And that experience was the eye opener for her, and she decided that she was going to use her legal knowledge to create an organization that advocates for those rights.
I see.
And so depending on the different legal contexts around the world, pushing for refugees to be able to not only have the right on paper to be able to work, but have it actually be accessible in reality.
Right.
She's a lawyer, though, right? And so she knows how to advocate for people's legal rights because
Hmm.
that's what many lawyers do and know how to do. I am not a lawyer. So me going in and trying to defend people's rights in front of a government would go very poorly. I would be bad at it because I don't know how to do it, right? What I know how to do is strategize and write and tell
Hmm.
stories.
Right.
And so, how can I make that work for refugees? Well, I can work for an organization like Asylum Access that makes refugee rights a reality. And I can contribute to their social media strategy and their email campaigns, and I can help them get more donations, and I can help them communicate with refugees in the global south. I can do all of those things because I know how. I'm a communicator. I know how to communicate and how to reach different audiences with the right message at the right time.
Right.
And so that's how I would frame it. I think that's the best way to be an advocate. Find something that you know you're good at. Find a skill that you know you're good at, like app development, Sanjay. And maybe you could create an app that helps people become more compassionate and empathetic in the world.
Yeah,
Hey, what an idea.
yeah. Yeah, no, exactly. I actually love that. I think it's, like to your point, it's not always giving money, time, whatever, right? It's trying to use what you're really good at and
Mhm.
trying to amplify that, because that's when you can really be a force multiplier, as opposed to
Exactly.
trying to do something. I think that's great. So I think maybe that's a, I'm just thinking about, looks like your life and the events are all, you know, really like threaded around giving, right, in some way, shape, or
Mm.
form. Like you started off, as young girl in school, and you go through these experiences with your family, and then visiting places like Sierra Leone and other places, and then in Ecuador as well, like just being part of, just sort of giving your time to help those in need, and then now, and then BCentrico and Centrico Digital. So I think it's a great time to talk about how, like, these experiences that you had led you to, it's almost like these giving opportunities are just like attracted towards you. They're coming to you, right? So can you talk about, Centrico Digital itself? Like, how did you, I guess, join Centrico Digital and the your and BCentrico, so that way we can maybe start digging a little bit into how, um, how we can learn from your experience there, and share some tricks around how other folks looking to do something similar can, can learn through your experience.
Sure. I started at Centrico Digital after I left Asylum Access, mainly because I was really attracted to the company culture and their commitment to becoming a B corporation.
I see.
So, B corporations are companies that meet the highest standards in sustainability, social impact, and transparency and governance. And I was intrigued by that. And my boss, who at Centrico Digital, Matthew Carpenter
Mhm.
Arevalo, he really wanted us to become a B corporation. And he wanted me to lead that process because I had experience in social impact and in that sector, in the social sector. To be totally honest, working for a nonprofit does not really prepare you to do B Corp certification.
I see. Okay.
But I did have the, I think having a background in human rights, which is what
Yeah.
one of the many things that I learned at Asylum Access, really did help frame the B Corporation certification and so that I could understand it maybe a little bit quicker, maybe a little bit faster. So I started out as a strategist at Centrico Digital. I was working on client work, many different clients, some nonprofits, some other social businesses, but mainly pretty traditional businesses that didn't have impact, really wasn't at the forefront of what they were doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I learned a ton from being a strategist on those accounts
I see.
because honestly, marketing for a nonprofit or marketing for a social business is not a whole lot different than marketing for a traditional business. Marketing for business, traditional business, and marketing for nonprofits and social business is really not all
Yeah.
that much different because at the end of the day, you have an audience or many audiences, you have an action or many actions that you want that
Mhm.
audience to take, and you have to find a way to convince them to take that action. Now, the
Right.
words that you use and the ways that you convince those people are going to differ, but that's going to differ across industries, not just between the social sector and the traditional business sector, but between construction and the dental industry, right? Those messages are going to be different regardless of the company. And each individual company is also going to have the way that they want to
Yeah.
communicate their message. So I learned a lot from working with those more traditional
Mhm.
companies at Centrico Digital and really grateful for that experience. And it took us about a year to get B Corp certification
Oh, okay.
because I was a strategist at the company. And so I still had all of the client work to do, plus doing the B Corp certification. So we
So is
really,
that a lot more work? We've
you
been
know,
thinking about the B Corp for Easy Donate as well, but
sure. For a small company, it's really not a whole lot of work. I think because I've already done it once, well, I've done it a couple of times because you have to provide a report every year once you're a benefit corporation. But doing the actual certification, it's really not so difficult. I mean, there are standards that you have to meet.
Right.
And really, the thing that took us the most time was not the certification itself, it was setting up the documentation and legal framework for us to be a benefit corporation. And so
I
that's
see.
really what took time. If you're already a benefit corporation, you already have a board of directors, if you
Right.
already have policies documented and in place for employee benefits and things like that, then it's not going to take long.
I see.
But we were already maybe a B Corp at heart, but we really didn't have it documented. And so we had to document all of those things first. And then once we became a benefit corporation and a B Corp, registered B Corp, we thought, well, B Corps and NGOs need marketing too. Why don't we
Mhm.
create a department that
I
specifically
see.
caters to those companies and organizations? And we already had some companies and organizations in that field. We worked with Flint Pro, which is this awesome tech company. They're an application that helps to measure changes in greenhouse gas emissions from changes
Wow.
in land use.
Mm-hmm.
So deforestation or reforestation, just changes in the natural environment that affect greenhouse gas emissions. They do incredible work. We had already worked with World Vision Ecuador, which is a organization in Ecuador and around the world to combat poverty and to advocate for the rights of children. And so we had already done some of that work and been excited by that work and wanted to do more of it. And so we created BCentrico
Mm-hmm.
as our department
I see.
to specifically cater to purpose-driven companies.
Oh, I never knew the B was for B Corp. Okay, now I get it.
Yeah, yeah, B or benefit or plan
Okay,
B, who knows?
I
But
see. This
yeah,
was created
BCentrico
just,
was sort of our play on our own name.
I see. And it was just to work with the socially conscious, purpose-driven companies.
Yeah, and
Right, I
some
see.
nonprofits as
Okay.
well,
Okay,
but really just trying to contribute and help scale those efforts that are making our
I see.
world a more just and sustainable place.
And given your background in working with, I guess with nonprofits, so you kind of bring that experience. And now in terms
Right.
of, I guess, so you've done a lot of writing, you've done a lot of like working with like advocacy type work. How did that translate into? Was there a ramp up to learn about just marketing, digital marketing, and all of that?
Oh
Or
yeah.
so
Yes.
okay.
So I think that I got um, hired on as a social media intern or communications intern in my first job,
Mm-hmm.
not because I knew about social media or how it worked,
Mm-hmm.
but because I was young and I
Mm-hmm.
could write.
I
And that was
see.
pretty much the only qualifications
Yeah.
that I had. Um, and so when I joined the Centrico digital team, it was probably a good 9-month boot
I see.
camp in learning how to do marketing and how to use marketing technologies. I had never used Google Analytics before. I had never used HubSpot. I had never used Salesforce. I think I had used MailChimp, but I hadn't used it well. I had written social media posts, but I had never put any money behind social media.
I see.
And so it took probably 9 months to a year for me to feel really comfortable in giving marketing advice
Okay.
to companies. And so I had really incredible people to learn from. Daniel
Mm-hmm.
Portilla, who was my mentor when I first arrived, Matthew Carpenter Revelu, who's an incredible thinker and marketer, and learned from other people that came on the team that had more experience in marketing and knowledge of marketing, like Jessica
Mm-hmm.
Luna and Ana Maria Villagomez and then Maria Jose Rodriguez. So I
Yeah.
learned so much from them as
Mm-hmm.
well. And I really learned by doing.
I see.
And that's how we approached a lot of training at Centrico was you learn by doing. You're not going to learn the theory of email marketing before you actually have to write an email for a client.
Yeah.
You're going to write the email for the client. You're going to get it checked by, whoever is doing the QA for that and the strategist of that team. but you're going to learn it by doing it and by messing it up.
Yeah,
So you're going to mess it
absolutely.
up first, and then you're going to learn how to do it right.
Yeah,
And I think that that's probably the same way in app development and technology development, that
yeah,
you
yeah.
really learn by doing.
No, absolutely. I think, yeah, the reason why I was trying to ask you that question was a lot of times, like even folks trying to start up something new, they're faced with this marketing challenge. I mean,
Hmm.
like for example, with Easy Donate, marketing is not something that I mean, there's so much to marketing, and there's so much to learn about
Yeah.
doing it right, right? So I guess the sort of like segue from that question is, what about like the folks that you worked with, like Diana Singh or Mark Horshowitz, like how was it how did how was it for them, like you're working with them, and what was the ramp up that I guess they had to make in order to get up to speed with the latest digital marketing,
Mm.
right? Whatever's going on. And the other part that I'm hoping you can help me understand is, um, as someone who is looking to do something to do something in this space, right? How much of their energy, if you will,
Mm.
needs to be dedicated to marketing, and what can they expect from marketing, like with or without marketing? So can you maybe
Right.
speak to that?
Yeah. So Deanna Singh and Mark Harashevsky are two really different examples, I would
Hmm.
say. They're both brilliant change makers in the space. Deanna Singh is the chief change agent and founder of Flying Elephant, which is the umbrella organization for Uplifting Impact,
Hmm.
which is a diversity, equity, and inclusion firm. And she does a million other things other than that, but is really a trailblazer in diversity, equity, and inclusion in the workplace. And Mark Harashevsky is a co-founder and CEO of Moving Worlds,
Yeah.
which is seeking to prepare talent for the social enterprise movement.
I
So
see.
they work with corporations, they work with social enterprises, they work with individuals to build up that social enterprise movement. And they both have very different backgrounds. So Deanna has done lots of different things in her past, working for nonprofits and funders and
Hmm.
businesses, and starting many. And Mark actually does have a background in marketing. So
Hmm.
working with Moving Worlds is, I would say, a little bit different than working with Flying Elephant, because we're really thought partners with Mark and his team about what to do in their marketing. Um, and working with Deanna's team, we were, until recently, they didn't have a marketing person. Now they have an awesome marketing
Hmm.
person because they've grown so much, and they needed a
I
marketing
see.
director, and they have an awesome new marketing director. But so now we're sort of moving more into that thought partner space, whereas before we were really leading the charge on how to use, for
I
example,
see.
HubSpot for their company, right? So working with clients at an agency is kind of fun in that way, because you end up being different roles for different organizations that have different needs. So
Yeah,
Moving Worlds really wanted a thought partner in how to market their services, and Uplifting Impact was really looking for more leadership in how to
I
market
see.
their services. So it's cool, and it, again, I don't know that that's different than marketing for traditional companies. I think that that's true across the board, across agency work, that as an agency you're going to be different things to different people. And
Right.
that's what's great about working at an agency. You're never doing the same thing every day. You're never working on only one
Same client.
account.
Yeah.
At least at Uhuru Network and at Centrico, we were never working on just one client or just one account. We got to do different things every day, and help people in different capacities.
Yeah. So with I guess you're right. So there is the similarity across all companies, right? All companies, whether or not it's a startup in the socially conscious space or anything else, the CEO is probably not going to know a whole lot of marketing at the beginning unless they're like Mark.
who
right?
have,
And
right, unless they have a background in
it's
it.
something that they need to do. So for everyone, it's sort of the same sort of experience. Now, in terms of, but in terms of energy, right? Like how much? Let's assume that it is. Everyone's going to have to go through this. How much energy should socially conscious companies put into getting the message out? I mean,
Mm,
is it sufficient for them? I guess it depends on a whole lot of things. Depends on how your
it
current,
does.
yeah, how many influencers you have, and a bunch of other things. So can you speak a little bit to that? I mean, how much of your time or energy should these companies spend on marketing to get the voice
On
out, and
marketing.
what is the um,
Yeah, I think that there are a lot of people who will give out numbers,
yeah?
right? So some people will say you should spend 10% of your revenue on
Mm-hmm.
marketing, and some people will say you should spend 25%. The CEO should be spending
Right.
25% of his time on or her time on marketing. I sort of
Mm-hmm.
I don't think that there's a one size fits all approach for any company or any startup. I think when you are first starting though, you do want to have an ally to your organization, even if they're not working for your organization,
Yeah.
that can tell you what and advise you on the strategy that you should use.
Right.
So if you think that you should be spending 25% of your time on marketing, but you're spending that time doing things just because you think you have to do them, like
Yeah.
posting on Facebook or sending an email or because you think you have to, that's probably you're probably not on the right track. You're probably not doing things super strategically. So what I recommend, especially for startups, especially for organizations that have limited bandwidth,
Yeah.
is I typically recommend pick one thing you're going to
Mm-hmm.
do and do it really well.
Well, okay.
So if you and get advice from people around you, right? But if you really think that Instagram is
Mm-hmm.
where your audience is, then do Instagram
I
and
see.
do it spectacularly, right? Do the best content that you possibly can on Instagram. And don't put energy into Twitter and don't put energy into Facebook and don't put too much energy into your website. You're going to want some place where people can contact you or where people can buy your product or can sign up for your service or download your app. But, and that has to be, but that's something that you can sort of set up and you won't have to put in a ton of time. You can get a minimum viable landing page up pretty easily, right?
Yeah.
And then just pick one channel. Pick one. If it's going to be LinkedIn, do LinkedIn, but only do LinkedIn and just focus on LinkedIn.
I
Because if you
see.
try to do everything, like you
Mm-hmm.
said, marketing can mean so many different things,
Yeah.
right? Just like business development can mean so many different things. Engineering. Think of marketing like engineering. Like
Right. Right.
that's how broad marketing is, right? There's
Yeah.
so many different ways to do marketing. There's SEO and there's graphic design and there's video and there's YouTube and there's a million other platforms that you can put out content on. There's podcasting. I mean, you could consider
Yeah.
all of those things marketing, right? But I would say pick one, stick to that one thing, stick to your guns for at least 6 months to a year, and then reevaluate.
I see.
I see so many times people flitting around to lots of different platforms and lots of different strategies and trying out so many different things and spreading their budget and their time so thin that they
Yeah.
never actually do one of those things really, really well.
Right. And I'm guessing like each of these platforms, or like Instagram or Facebook, they all have the demographics that they're catered to, right?
Yeah,
Or,
I mean, it depends on your audience, right?
right.
If you're trying to get in front of, you know, North American women who are moms, maybe look at Pinterest.
I see.
But if you're looking for to get in front of Gen Z kids in college, probably want to be on TikTok,
I see.
right? If you're looking for a business development audience, people in sales and marketing, maybe LinkedIn is probably your
I
space,
see.
right? So it really just depends on who your audience is. Facebook can be casting a wide net, but Facebook just reported a couple weeks ago or last week that it's the first time that they haven't grown in
Yeah,
users. So all those predictions that Facebook is on the way out, maybe they haven't happened as quickly as people predicted, but maybe Facebook is on the way out. So, you have to switch. And that's why I say, stick to
yeah,
your guns and stick to one thing. And in 6 months to a year, yeah, reevaluate, right? See what are you're going to want to evaluate your methods and your results probably on a monthly basis, and then really rethink your strategy on a biannual or annual basis, right? And so those check-in points are really important. But sticking
right.
to one thing is for a time and getting it right is also just as important.
And I think that's where what you talk when you mention having that advisor, right,
Mm,
at the beginning of your journey. So I think like the key takeaways I think are one are, you know, it's important, like you do need to spend time and focus on
yeah.
marketing, because without, I mean, marketing is sometimes like the voice, right? It's the voice of your business.
Hmm.
And having a stakeholder up front or advisor who can advise you on the right strategy,
Right.
things that you may not be considering, I think that's definitely going to help companies be more successful. So other than the marketing aspect, I think is one area of I guess you're working with these companies. Are there other challenges? Again, I know that every company probably has these challenges, but one of the when I think about or when I look at socially conscious companies, I think it's almost like all eyes are on them, right? Because
Hmm.
they are saying that they are socially conscious. They're saying so they. It's, is it like it's harder for them to make a mistake, and
Huh.
there's something that needs to be done on the marketing side in order to keep reiterating their
Commitment.
their commitment exactly. How do you see that as is it a challenge for these companies or um,
Yeah, I think it depends on maybe how the company started or what the company leadership is really incentivizing. So, if the company really genuinely wants to make an impact on the world and their products or services are genuinely making that happen,
yeah,
then I think it's less risky, maybe,
yeah,
to talk about those things. But if your company is really just using social impact or sustainability for a marketing ploy, I think people sniff that out really
yeah,
quickly.
I
And
see.
I
Okay.
think it's really, if it's not genuine, it's kind of like social media content. You really have to be authentic. If you're
Yeah,
not being your authentic self, people sniff it out and they can
exactly.
tell, right? And I think it's the same thing with social media or with social impact and sustainability. It's like if you say you're a really sustainable company, show me,
Right.
right? It's not about marketing or it's not all about marketing. Now, I will say though that there are a lot of B corporations who do amazing work and are successful, but have a really hard time talking about themselves and bragging about themselves because they don't want to appear like they're doing it just for the marketing ploy. And
Exactly.
so sometimes they go to the other extreme where they're just not talking about it at all. And that also doesn't do them any good, right? Because if you don't talk about it at all, well then you're not really being an advocate for it, right?
Right. Right.
So I think that there are cases, but it's kind of funny that I run into more purpose driven, really genuinely purpose driven organizations or companies that probably aren't doing enough to brag about themselves. Whereas other companies that maybe aren't super genuine about it are doing way too much.
I see. But it's just balance that needs to be
Yeah.
maintained. And yeah, I think just to talk to this aspect, right, and the need to maybe have a strong advocate or an advisor, especially like on socially driven companies. Like one example is we were trying to put out a campaign on Easy Donate to get people to help others and then talk
Mm,
about it on Facebook. And it turned out to be a really bad idea because nobody wants to talk about the good that they do because it could
right.
mean maybe embarrassing the folks that they're helping, right? So it's sort of like you need to put
Ah,
on that hat where it's different. It's not like selling a product and talking about it. It's like
right.
there are
Right.
these other emotions that you need to pay attention to,
Totally.
right? Which is sort of like what I was trying to get at, like as someone, right, working with these companies, right, the socially conscious, like what are some of the like the skill sets that you bring. And
Mm,
I also wanted to talk about even the folks that you hire, right? I mean, not everyone can work, I guess has the mindset or the temperament maybe to work with socially conscious companies or purpose driven companies. Like, what do you have to do? You have to do something special in your hiring process to bring in people with that skill set. And what sort of skills
yeah.
are we talking about?
Yeah, that's a good question about hiring. I would say if they really don't care about any social or environmental issue, that's kind of a red flag to me if you
Right.
want to do purpose driven or if you want to work in just purpose driven work. I'm not saying that people can't find that
Yeah.
over time, but I think that there's enough people that care about social and environmental issues that you can pretty easily find people that care. But I also think that that's also not enough,
Yeah.
right? You also need people who can, at least in my space, learn really quickly, learn from their mistakes, be humble, mess up,
Yeah.
admit it, move on quickly, be resilient. I mean, there are so many other things that I look for as well that I would say it's the easy part is finding somebody who who cares about and is
I
excited
see.
about social and environmental
Because it's like
topics.
everyone cares, or everyone.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if everybody cares, to be
Yeah,
honest.
but
I
because
have interviewed some
most
people that just don't seem to be super interested in it.
okay,
But again, I think it's easy enough to find people. So many people do care, and so many people can get their eyes opened really easily. And a lot of people
okay,
are open to learning about new things. I think the harder part about hiring maybe is just getting those skills that you need, right?
okay,
Understanding problem solving, detail orientation, marketing detail orientation is probably one of the top 5 skills that I need when I'm hiring somebody because there are just so many moving parts and so many pieces of copy and artwork that are going
mhm,
through and getting produced at a really fast paced, and so you have to be able to check for those errors and flag those. And then in marketing, because it is a lot like skateboarding. Like you just you have to do things over and over and over again and fall on your butt a million times
yeah,
before you actually learn how to do something well.
yeah,
And so you really have to be resilient to work
I see.
in that space. Um, and you have to be able to forgive yourself
Yeah,
too for those mistakes.
yeah,
I think that that's probably true in many industries, but it's just something that's been really the case in the last 5 years that I've worked
yes, I
in
see.
marketing and communications.
Um, so I'm trying to move to a little bit a slightly different question, related though. How did working with these companies like change or affect your view of
Oh,
the world in your life?
oh,
Yeah, that.
like 100%. Like
Yeah.
everything that I thought that I knew about things has been changed by these
Okay.
clients that I've worked with. I mean, even in working starting with asylum access, I first of all, I didn't really know anything about refugee rights and probably what I thought I knew was wrong,
Mhm.
right? Um and then when I started working with I think probably the best example is when we started working with Deanna Singh and
Okay.
Flying Elephant and her company Uplifting Impact. And I went to her so it was in the summer of 2020
Mm-hmm.
after George Floyd's murder that people were starting to really, people had already always reached out to Deanna and her partner and husband, Justin Ponder, who have worked in diversity, equity, and inclusion for decades. Um, they had always reached out to them, but after George Floyd was murdered, that was that summer of 2020, they just got inundated with people
Mm-hmm.
asking, how can we help? How can we be allies? How can we help to bridge this gap in, how can we end this violence? How can we help Black and Brown communities?
Mm-hmm.
We want to be part of the change. And so Deanna started a virtual summit called How to Be an Ally.
I
And
see.
it's 3 days and it's an incredible event. And their first one was in August of 2020. I mean, they whipped this thing out in a month
Wow.
or a month and a half, maybe. I mean, it was incredible. We had over
This
100
was where
people.
in Atlanta? Like where was this? Or
They're in so they're based in Milwaukee,
Milwaukee? I see.
Wisconsin, but
I see.
their part or their team is all over the world.
Oh, okay.
So they have us in Quito
Oh,
and
wow.
Mexico. They have someone in Puerto Rico. They have someone in Hawaii. I mean, they New York. They've had people all over the map.
Nice.
Yeah, all across the Americas, actually. And so she started this summit, and it's a really incredible experience.
Mm-hmm.
And her lessons that she teaches in that, they sound so simple when you hear them, but they really are life changing. I mean, they
I
really
see.
are profound. And I think sometimes that's what people miss, that the most simple messages are sometimes the most profound
Yeah.
and make people sit back and go,
Yeah.
wow, I've
She
never thought of it
she's
that way.
such an amazing storyteller. I
She
mean,
is.
I listened to her TED talk. Was it? She's quite amazing.
Yeah, no, she's incredible and her team is incredible. Um, and we love working with them. But I would say that I have to say that that might be the client that I have one of the clients that I've learned the most
I
from.
see.
Not necessarily about marketing, but we have learned a lot from running campaigns for them and for running we mainly we manage their HubSpot instance
I
and
see.
have done a couple of other things. But just the content of what we get to write about. It's one of the clients that I love doing copywriting for
Does she
because
write all your content or
yeah, so we do write some of their content, but obviously it's based on their materials.
material?
So they give us their materials from the summit and from her upcoming book, and
Yeah.
then we write content for emails and things like that. I can't wait to read her new book
Yeah.
called Actions Speak Louder. It's
I heard
coming out in
about that.
May of 2022, and that's going to be amazing. But I think they've had a really profound impact on my
Yeah.
worldview, and I'm so grateful for them.
Nice. Um, I think we're kind of about trying to wrap this up. Um, I wanted to ask you about what's next for Caroline. I know you guys, you've gone through B-Centrico, Centrico Digital, now it's Uhuru Network.
Yeah.
Yeah. So you have like so many talents. Obviously, like you're a singer, you host great interviews, and you've led marketing for B-Centrico. What do you see yourself doing next?
So I am now a strategist at Uhuru Network. So Uhuru Network acquired Centrico Digital, which BCentrico was part of Centrico Digital. And so they acquired us at the end of last year and have merged us into their team.
Nice, yeah,
And we are now in the thick of it, merging our companies together. And we've been able to keep all of our purpose-driven clients, which is awesome.
nice.
Uhuru Network is very much committed to continuing that work with purpose driven
Mhm.
companies. Right now, we're trying to figure out how do we spread the love around the company? So, how do we make it so that
Yeah,
everybody gets to work on some of these projects and not just our department? I have to say, making it our own department was a little bit selfish on my part because then I got to work with almost all of the purpose driven companies. But then I thought, wait, everybody should get to do this.
Yeah, yeah.
And so we want to spread the love and spread it around the company and get more clients like that and do more of that kind of work. And this is a really new role for me. I was a strategist at BCentrico, and then I sort of moved up into leadership, and now I'm getting back into the day-to-day of building strategies for clients, which is something that I just really enjoy
Yeah.
and again have awesome clients to work for, so that's always a plus. And so what's next for me in that world is getting used to my new role
Uh-huh.
and hopefully getting more and more clients as time goes on. And more personally, I am have really been missing community work,
I
and
see.
especially community work in the arts. And so I'm hoping to continue that. There is a little theater in my
Uh-huh.
neighborhood and that I have never been to, and I can't believe I've never been to it, but
Okay.
I did move to this neighborhood not too long before the pandemic started. So there wasn't a whole lot of opportunity, but I'm really hoping to get to know that and really kind of create more connections in my local community in Sambisa in Quito, Ecuador. So that's something that I'm looking forward to.
Nice. No, that's great. And, all the best with that. Like I said, you're
Thanks.
multi-talented. So, and I'm sure you'll find ways to give back. So, what's a typical day in the life of Caroline? I'd love. I
A
usually ask
typical
that question
day.
to all to all my guests.
That's awesome. I love it. Um, I don't know how exciting it's going to sound, but so I am not an early bird
Okay.
by any stretch of the imagination. So I like to take my time in the morning when I do get up. So I'm usually up by 7:30 and sometimes hitting that snooze until like
Too bad. It's not
7:45.
too bad.
And then I am on Eastern time right now, which is a big
Okay.
plus because a lot of my clients are in earlier time zones, and so I kind of have that plus because I wake up, I just by nature then I wake up earlier than most of my clients,
Right,
so it
right.
works. And we're a globally distributed company, and we're Uhuru Network is we have a lot of flexibility in the hours that we work, so
Uh-huh.
that's awesome for me. So yeah, I'm up by then. I take my dog Chavela for a walk every morning,
And
and we
what is
walk.
she? He?
She,
She? And what?
yeah,
What breed is your?
she's a Yorkshire Terrier,
All right. Nice.
and she has the most personality of any dog I know.
Okay.
Um, and so we go and we walk around our park. We
Mhm.
have a park downtown in my neighborhood, a couple blocks away. So we walk around that 3 or 4 times, and then I come back, and my husband Ordacio usually makes breakfast
Okay.
because I'm very
Lucky you.
spoiled.
Okay.
And so usually breakfast is ready by then, or maybe I'm making myself my cup of tea, which you saw me
Hmm.
drinking here.
Yeah.
And then I usually get started around 9:30 working, and I have calls with clients and team members, and we're figuring out strategies and solving
Hmm.
problems. Right now it's a lot of troubleshooting our merger and trying to figure out how to best merge our client work and
I
teams
see.
together, so that's a lot of meetings right now.
Yeah.
And so I spend a lot of my time on video calls and a lot of my time on Zoom.
Hmm.
And then at the end of the day, I wind down with a yoga video. So I have been
Nice.
doing, I'm very proud of this because I am not an athletic person and I have never been really active, but I have been doing yoga once a day for the past 6 months,
That's
and I
great.
have not missed a day. And I'm so
Wow.
proud of it.
This is like
I,
meditation, exercise, everything together.
yeah, it's a little bit of both.
Oh, okay.
I watch yoga with Adrienne, with I
Nice.
think 14 million other people in the world watch
Okay.
her. She has
Yoga.
14, I think
Okay.
she has something like 14 million subscribers on YouTube. She's amazing.
Wow.
And she does these 30-day yoga journeys,
Hmm.
and I follow them, and I haven't missed a day in the last 6 months. So that is my resolution for this year, is to not miss a day in 2022. And so I usually wind down with that after work because I find that when I'm on video calls all day, my face hurts at the end of the day.
Yeah,
Like I can't tell you why, but like I feel like I've just been like talking and smiling and laughing and because we just have so much fun at Uhuru
yeah,
Network apparently, that my face actually gets
yeah.
so tired. And the thing that helps me decompose or de-stress and sort of relax all of that, the only thing that's
It's
worked
a
for me
yoga.
is yoga. So yeah, it's a little bit of meditation, stretching, it's a little bit of strength training and exercise, but it's just between 20 and 40 minutes a day. It's very simple, very easy for someone who is not an active person like myself to make that a routine. Yeah. And then I enjoy my evening with my husband, usually at home. We're very much homebodies. We love cooking. I love cooking. Love the kitchen. And yeah, and we watch a lot of Netflix and Curiosity
Yeah.
Stream.
What are you watching now? Netflix.
We love watching right now. So I got Curiosity Stream for a
Okay.
year, and I bought it for like half of my Christmas presents last year
All
were
right.
Curiosity Stream because it was such a good deal. And it's really cool. I used to watch the History Channel with my dad a lot, and so it's kind of nostalgic for me to watch things that are kind of like that. So we've really enjoyed a series about the Nile, a series about the story of Europe. We watched another one that was about all of the World Heritage sites
Mm-hmm.
that are designated by UNESCO. That was really fascinating. Yeah, we love sort of history and documentaries type things.
No, that's great. I think you just learned so much
Yeah, yeah. I
from.
also, I mean, that sounds really maybe uppity. I also really like trashy reality TV.
Okay.
So like I don't discriminate. I love
Yeah.
TV and so I'll do it all. But
Yeah,
that's what we've been watching recently.
I think TV is great.
I love
It's a
it.
nice way to wind down and
Yeah.
wrap up your day, right?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that brings us to the end of the interview. Thank you so much, Caroline,
Of
for taking the time to
course.
tell your story. I know that you're just getting started, but I'm sure that your life and your work will continue to inspire a lot of other folks. So thanks
Thanks so much, Sanjay.
for talking to us. Yeah,
It was great. It was so fun.
sure thing. Yeah.